Good evening. My name is Malcolm Clemens Young, and I'm the Dean of Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, California. Welcome to the forum, and thanks for joining us online. Every year, the Cathedral chooses a theme for inspiration and reflection. And in 2020, our theme is the Year of Bridges. In this landmark year, the 150th and 100th anniversaries of the amendments granting the vote to men of color and to women, in the midst of a divisive presidency and a divisive election, the need for reconciliation in our country and city is urgent. It is an honor to have Mayor London Breed as my guest this evening to talk about San Francisco mid-pandemic and post-election. Mayor Breed is a native San Franciscan and represented District 5 on the Board of Supervisors for 6 years, including 3 years as president before being elected as the first African-American woman and second woman in San Francisco history to serve as mayor. She was re-elected for her first full 4-year term last year. She is leading San Francisco's response to COVID-19 and guiding the city's phased reopening and economic recovery. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Mayor Breed.
Thank you so much.
In the middle of a conversation when we had to pull ourselves together. I was saying that Mayor Breed, when I last saw you in person, was on the steps of Civic Center after George Floyd's murder. And I was just saying how powerful your words were, but I didn't say that I thought that if you ever get sick and tired of people complaining in politics, you definitely have a whole world of possibility as a preacher. I think you do great at that. And I would definitely be I think it's pretty much what I heard from you say, what I heard you say that day was pretty much the best sermon I've heard in the last few years. So thank you so much for your public witness. It was a very, very powerful moment. And I think you did an extraordinary job of leading us in that moment when we really needed help, and you were there for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Young. And, the moment called for it. And I think the Spirit lifted me and moved me in that direction. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just spoke from the heart. It was how I felt at the time. And I know so many people in this country felt the same way when they saw what we saw, the video, and how could you do this to another human being? And as someone who grew up in the church, as someone who's taught to treat my brother and my sister like I would want to be treated, or with love and respect in the way that God would treat us, it just is heartbreaking to think that another human being could treat someone like that and to basically take away their life in such a really hard way to witness, because we know that that is not of God. And as someone who grew up in the church, as someone who has tried to live my life by faith and to do unto others as I wish to be done unto me, I just think that at this time is so important that spiritual people are coming forward in ways to not only provide prayer, but to provide testimony and to talk about their experiences and healing and coming together. And that was just a moment where it was important for me as a leader in San Francisco, as a Black woman, as someone who has lived in experiences where I've witnessed those kinds of things occur in the African American community. All of that came forth in me, and I felt really compelled, but also I felt the energy around me and the hurt and the pain from so many people who just wanted it all to stop so that we could move forward together. And that never happens to one more person in this country.
Yeah, and that was the powerful thing, because first of all, in the Bible, it says, you don't have to write out everything. When they deliver you before the tribunals, the Spirit will speak to you. It'll tell you what to say. But I mean, your situation was so difficult as kind of our primary authority in city government. And then also as a person who, as you said, on that day, whose cousin was killed by San Francisco police. I mean, and to be able to stand with a foot in both those two worlds and to be able to speak from the heart, it was like I said, it was one of the most powerful things I've experienced in public. It was just what we needed to hear and talk about, for sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you talked about just how there's a way in which the people we were all there and we kind of brought something out of you that surprised you. I mean, I think that's the hard part about COVID, is just that we don't have those moments quite as much. we have to do more work in imagining what people are going to need from us when we're speaking to them. But I wonder just about for you, just like, what are you learning about communications just through all the COVID stuff, and how has that changed your style or changed how things look as you try to communicate the messages that the city are so important for us to survive in the city?
Well, first of all, it made me realize just how much I love people, and how much I
Same
miss
here.
being around people, and how much I get my energy from being around people. And I just was thinking, because I get invited to things all the time. And in the past, I would have to say no to certain things, not because I didn't want to go, but because of time constraints based on how many events I get invited to. And now I wish for the life of me that I could go to all of those events and then some right now, just to be around people. And it really has changed, how I operate. And I'm of course not giving as many speeches as I usually do, and stopping by as many events as I typically do. I'm spending more time really managing the city, of course, which I would have done anyway, but it's like constant, it's nonstop. I just, before this Zoom conversation, I was on the phone with the Department of Public Health. I'm on the phone, I'm dealing with city related stuff, even more so than I had before. But everything is on the phone, everything is on Zoom. I used to love Zoom at first when it started, and now I can't stand Zoom because I want to see people. And also, what I have to think every time I do anything, especially when other people are going to be watching, I have to be mindful of what is it that you think people need to hear. Because we can't take for granted that everything that I know, all the information I'm getting, that everyone knows what's happening. I don't take that for granted. And I'm mindful that people are looking to me as the mayor for answers. And that's what I try to provide as much as I possibly can.
I totally wonder what that was like. I mean, all of us, I mean, at the very beginning, I mean, it's funny. I mean, your name is kind of stamped on our life because it was that, the day when you issued the shelter in place order. I mean, that was, one of the most important days of all of our lives. And you're so associated with that in my mind. But I wonder what it was like when you first started to realize the seriousness of the pandemic. And I wonder too, if you can talk about if there were any particular decisions that were especially difficult in those days.
Yeah, I would say when we first in February, we had to issue a declaration of emergency. That was really hard because before that happened, we had not had any cases of COVID. We only knew what we heard in theory, what we knew was possibly coming. And also our Chinese community was suffering. Chinatown was empty, tourism was suffering, our economy was already dealt a really hard blow. And then on top of that, as mayor, I had to basically officially declare a state of emergency, which was going to sound the alarm unlike anything had done before. That was hard because I knew it would have an impact on our city and on our economy and on people's livelihood. So that was very difficult, but I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice because of the information I had. I didn't understand everything that would have happened. I didn't understand that we would still be, as of November 2020, still almost in essence on lockdown in some capacity. But I understood that if we didn't do anything, that more people could die. And I think that was really the guiding force. I may not have understood everything and a vaccine or a cure or how it was spread or what that entailed, but I did get the message that people might be turned away from the hospital. People could potentially die. And that's really what stopped me in my tracks. And it was so important for me to make sure that the people of San Francisco knew exactly what I knew. And that was the message around the emergency declaration. And then later on, the stay-at-home order, which was one of the hardest things I've had to do as mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it, I mean, you really were the first one. I think that makes it so much harder too. I mean, it would have been a very different situation if the President of the United States had issued a coordinated approach, and then you as mayor would be able to say, listen, we're working in concert with, the best scientific practices, and all the cities in the country are doing the same thing. But I mean, that's part of what you made it possible for like institutions to do, because I don't know if I'll tell you what it was like from my perspective. And so, so we would have like a Bible study that was happening. It's like, should we have the Bible study or not? Should we have the 10 o'clock worship, the 11 o'clock worship service or not? We're having a meeting. Should we have Alcoholics Anonymous? I mean, every single thing we had to decide whether we were going to do. And then when you issued the order, the shelter in place order, it was really simple. We didn't have to have 10 meetings to decide what we were going to do, because everything was pretty much laid out for us.
Well, what was interesting for us is, for example, the public health department, as you remember, they started to give us numbers of what events, like the events were getting to a point where it was like, it can only be 1,000, it can only be 200, it can only be this. And for me, I was like, well, wait a minute, why? These are arbitrary numbers. Why are we giving arbitrary numbers when we know that we need to basically sacrifice right now in order to protect people? So there was some pushback from me too, because I was concerned about continuing to give people arbitrary numbers and not be able to explain why.
Right. Yeah, because you really were in the hot seat. I mean, yeah, it was a crazy time. And fortunately, I had studied the history of Grace Cathedral. During the last pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic, we closed down then too. So if I hadn't known about that, it would have felt very different to me, because I've never been in a church which didn't have a worship service on a Sunday morning. I mean, it's just, we're in new ground. I mean, I never imagined that the men and boys choir wouldn't be able to sing, or all the things that were. But everybody's in new ground for sure. But you were definitely at the center of all the ways that we were. But I wanted I have so many COVID questions. I could talk to you about COVID for like 4 hours. But I also want to talk to you about the election too. And just, I wonder if you can tell me just a little bit about just like what it felt like last week for you as somebody who's been a candidate in elected office. Like, how does that feel different for you, having been through it? And then maybe you can talk a little bit about just what does it say about America, that we had the results that we had last week in the national elections?
Well, first of all, I was so happy. I'm still so happy. I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to do. I'm so excited and I'm so happy and I'm so grateful that we have a president and a vice president who is going to focus on taking care of the people of this country, especially in light of what we're dealing with around COVID, the racial uprising of what's happening, all of these really challenging times. And really, they're talking about healing. They're talking about coming together. And so it was very emotional for me because I also personally know Kamala.
Right. That's what I was thinking. I was like wondering what because it's like having your friend get elected to be the vice president.
It's like, and then she like texts me in the middle of the night a message thanking me for, I'm just like, how do you have time to think about me? And you're like about to run the country. Like, go ahead, just do what you need to do. As someone who was a candidate, I know how overwhelming. I'm sure she's getting phone calls and text messages. I mean, I was mayor, but she's like vice president. And so it gets even more crazy. And so part of it was amazing to see. And I was so proud. And then as a Black woman, like I saw a reflection in some way, because I'm just like, is this really possible for someone like me? When I became mayor, I couldn't believe it. I still don't believe it. I'm like, this is unbelievable that someone who grew up raised by her grandmother in public housing could be mayor of San Francisco.
Yeah.
So it is amazing to see. And I'm really overwhelmed. I'm so excited. And I think so many people feel so good about, where we're headed. But of course, as you also saw with the election results, there were like millions of people who voted for the current president. And it's clear that we have a lot of division. It's clear that we're in need of a way to bring people together. And I'm hopeful that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will do just that, because it was a pretty pretty ugly race. And, regardless of politics, I just have a problem with how divisive the president is, and some of the things that he's done in the past that have really devalued people, women, people of color, and other things. And what I tell people, they say, when they start to criticize the president, I said, what we can do, we can pray for him.
Yeah.
We can pray for him and hope that something good comes out of his experience. I wanted him to be successful because it means our country is successful. So yes, just like Nancy Pelosi said, pray for the president.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we want and deserve better. And sadly we didn't get it. And now my hope is that because of what happened in this election, that we're able to move forward, we're able to heal, but we know there's going to be some challenges before we get to that point.
How do you think America is going to be different because of Kamala Harris? I mean, there was so much in my family. I was just like, this is an amazing thing to have a woman as a vice president, to have a child of immigrants as the vice president, to have a Black woman as vice president. I mean, there's so many ways in which she's going to bring a different kind of insight. I mean, I've never seen a vice president like her. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what you think she might bring to just kind of our national life.
Well, first of all, I get excited when I think about kids who are growing up now, and they won't know any different.
Yeah.
This kid was saying to his mom, because they had like a couple girls, and they had this young boy. He was about 5 years old. Mommy, this was in front of me. Mommy, can boys be mayor too? And I thought to myself, yes, of course boys could be mayor, but this is what he's growing up knowing. And what I appreciate about the experience is that we're going to see this, especially young people, and they're going to know what's possible.
Yeah.
Girls all over the country, no matter what race they are, they're going to see this.
Yeah.
First woman in a VP seat, and they're going to know it's possible, not just see it on TV. We've seen it on TV on, 24. We've seen it on Veep. Right. We've seen it on TV for years now, all these women vice presidents and presidents, but we've not seen it in reality. Yeah. And so this is our reality now. And I think that it will bring a lot of hope, and especially knowing what kind of person Kamala is. She's compassionate, she's firm, she is committed to the work, she cares about people in general. And I just think she's going to bring that, that mamala touch that she has. And also her understanding of the challenges that we face on a local level. And that's what's going to be important. But it's going to be nice to watch and to see, Uncle Dougie, the first, second.
That's right. That's totally right. He's got to learn he's going to be setting habits and ways of doing things they're going to have a huge lasting effect too. You're right.
But he's such a great person.
Yeah.
He's such an amazing person. And I just think that we're going to see something like we've never seen before. And what we're hoping for is, we love what we see, but we also need change on a local level. We also need support where, hundreds of thousands of people in this state alone have lost their jobs. Over 1 million, we have work to do on that level. So I think the fact that she gets it and understands it, policies and commitments from this administration are going to have an impact on people's lives differently than they do now.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so hopeful for the future. One of the hardest things that we have in San Francisco is just, and I had so many questions for you about this, just because I imagine you as a little girl, walking around and seeing the Civic Center, and somebody said, "Hey, you're going to be the mayor one day in the Civic Center." And it would just be, it would be hard to believe.
Nobody ever said that to me, and
I know,
never
completely.
thought that was possible. I didn't think I just didn't want to be poor,
right, completely.
We lived in public housing. It was very challenging. I would always get upset and I would cry a lot because there were things that we could not do. And then I also felt bad because I knew my grandmother, she tried her best, and it was just hard for us. So I didn't think I'd even go to college. Yeah. And I ended up in college. So just imagine being a kid now and someone saying to that kid, you could be mayor too. Like that
Yeah,
is,
it is.
that makes every day of this job worth it. It is so incredible to be in a position where any kid can look at me and they see themselves and they see what's possible. Uh,
Yeah.
yes, and so that just didn't exist for me.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think about that. I just wonder too, just like what would college and graduate school and what did you learn in those places? And what kind of advice do you give for younger people, like people who are in their early 20s about how to navigate this world that's changing so much?
Yeah, well, for me, it was odd because like when I got in college, I was struggling a little bit because I was trying to catch up.
Yeah.
And I had some scholarships. I did well in high school, but it was tough financially, and so I ended up okay because I worked. I cleaned houses, I babysat. I worked at a bank. Like I worked a lot of jobs.
Yeah, me too.
And what I say to young people is, especially those that have support from their families, do not take anything for granted. There are so many people out there that may not have an opportunity, and always put your best foot forward. Don't look at someone else and think, oh, I wish I could do what they did, or, oh, I wish I had that support, or I wish I had that life. Be happy and content with what you have, and take everything that you know and learn as much as you can to be the best person that you're meant to be.
Yeah.
Because I'm meant to be who I am, just like you're meant to be who you are. And I didn't understand that because at first, I grew up in public housing and I was honestly angry. I was like, why is it that we're poor? Why is it, why is it my family? Why is it that we have to experience this? And I used to talk to my grandmother about this a lot. And the thing she would say to me is, you got a roof over your head. She was like, I love you. My grandmother, was not sentimental, but she took care of me. And she's like, you're lucky because some people don't even have this. So you should be grateful to God for what you have. Yeah. And that you have, people who care about you. And that really, helped to guide me. I felt more confident because I had my grandmother. I felt more confident because I had my community. And I knew that, I had to go to school and learn everything I can so that I could be successful in life. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just know that I couldn't take anything for granted because of the opportunity that I had. And what I say to young people now is don't take anything for granted. Yeah. Don't take this moment for granted. Don't take your opportunities in the educational system for granted. Study hard, work hard, and put your best foot forward and do whatever you can to be a success in life in whatever capacity, because there are so many people that have never even been given this opportunity.
Yeah, and I really do think one of the best things about a life of faith is that it gives you a direction for your gratitude. I mean, in living out of gratitude it's just a powerful force. And it's hard for everybody to learn, and it's easier for some than others. But gratitude is a really important part of what it means to be a flourishing human being.
Because people say to me, they were like, even because I talk to kids a lot, and they say, well, you didn't have a mommy and daddy. I said, well, they weren't around. My grandmother, fortunately, was there. And so and I tell these kids, especially those who are fortunate enough to have parents who care, I'm like, be grateful, because some kids don't have parents. And be grateful, and don't always complain to your mom and dad. Sometimes just say thank you, because so many people are struggling, and we're fortunate when we're in a good situation. And it's not just our responsibility to take care of ourselves, right? It's our responsibility to look out for one another and to other people who are less fortunate. How do we uplift and support them in a way that's going to help change the outcome of their life?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly, when things are working best, that's exactly how we should be. So much has changed since I last saw you in person. I can't wait to see you in person again. But, since we were standing on the steps of the Civic Center on that June day, how has your perspective changed on just the situation on race in America? on Black Lives Matter, on just how do things look different than they did at the beginning of summer?
Well, I gotta say, I felt like, wow, everybody's paying attention to this. Like
Yeah.
for me as a Black person who have witnessed a lot of racial injustice my entire life, I just took for granted that nothing would change because we talk about it and we complain about it and we try to move forward with action about it, but we don't see change. And I think, the outrage that people expressed in that way gave me hope that people who may not have experienced this actually understand now how Black people are treated differently in this country than anyone else, and how it's time to make a real change that will make sure that what happened to George Floyd doesn't happen to another Black man in this country again. So I appreciated that so much, and it was so overwhelming and so powerful. It's like this country is finally having an honest conversation about race and really trying to put forward a change. And just, when they were talking about the new president-elect, and they were talking about it on CNN, they were like, we're going to go live to Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, D.C. And I thought, what? Did they just say what I thought they said? Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Like, I hit the roof, right? And I just thought, wow, are we really saying this right now?
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, when I was at UC Davis, Proposition 209.
Oh,
passed.
I know. That was terrible.
And Proposition 209. So I got in because of affirmative action. And I don't know if I would have made it into the UC system. I don't know if I would have gotten the additional help and the support and the tutoring
I feel
that
the same
I needed.
way. Yeah.
I had so much help, and I was lucky to make it through and finish UC Davis. And as this whole thing happened and 209 happened, you started to see a significant decline of African Americans in the UC system.
And a significant decline in what the UC system is able to offer. You and I are so fortunate that we could be in the UCs when there was that diversity, because that was a huge part of my education. I mean, it may have been more important for me to know more Black people than it would be to, take another economics class, or, to have one more writing class or whatever, one more math class. So I feel like the university has suffered hugely as a result of Proposition 209.
Because when you think about it, just imagine if races, like you have different races that are in schools together, and then you're learning about those experiences, the less likely you're going to have the kind of conflicts that you see playing themselves out, based on race in this country. Yeah. And so affirmative action is not like a handout. It's an opportunity. It's making sure that you are evening the playing field, that you are providing diverse communities and a diverse workforce and preparing people for success.
Yeah.
And so to see in California Proposition 16 fail.
I know. I was so disappointed by that.
It was heartbreaking because I thought that the conversation around the uprising here and the protest and how people really, felt about this issue. I thought that now was the time to bring it back because of what it means, not just for Black people, but for women, for minorities in general, and for diversity and inclusion in our state and in our country.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of places are scrambling to have those cultural competencies, and they wouldn't be if we'd continued to educate more people of diverse backgrounds. Anyway, I feel terrible. I can't believe our time has run out, but our time has. But I would love it if you could just tell me something you're seeing that's giving you what's giving you hope these days. What signs of blessing and good fortune are you seeing on the horizon for us?
Well, I gotta say, I'm so proud of this city. I'm so proud to be mayor of this city. It's been hard. It's been hard for all of us. And I know in the beginning, I felt like everybody's mama because I went out.
Well, you were. Don't
I
feel
was like in the press conference.
We'll get through this together.
You better wear your mask. You better do this.
Wear your mask.
I felt like I was channeling my grandmother. I really did, because, you know, I drove her crazy. And so she would tell me things over and over and over and over again. And I was one of those kids, you know, sometimes I listened, sometimes I didn't. But I felt like her every time I went out and I said, folks, you're messing up. We're going to have to do this, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. But ultimately, the people of San Francisco, they got it.
Yeah.
And because of it, you know, we're in a better place. We're not out of the woods. We are seeing, you know, an uptick. We're concerned and about what's happening now with the numbers. But at the end of the day, it's because of the people of this city that San Francisco is now, you know, a model for the rest of the country, because of what we did in our early action, but also the behavior of the people of this city. And I know it's been hard. It's been hard on parents. It's been hard on teachers. It's been hard on the elderly who aren't getting visitors like they used to. It's been hard on our religious community. We haven't been able to have service and singing and congregations coming together. It's been hard. It's been so hard. And what gives me hope is just how people have just sucked it up and said, you know what, we're in this together and we're going to get through this. And I've been out in the streets a little bit and folks have been, thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you for keeping us safe. Thank you for keeping us safe. We're going to get through this. So the motivation that I get comes from the people of this city, you know, everyone doing their part, everyone supporting one another. No, we don't want to be in this situation, but we also realize that we are in this together. It is necessary. And by the grace of God, we will get through this and we will emerge stronger than we ever have been before because of this very challenging time. So I'm hopeful about the future, and I can't wait until we get over this hump so we could really come together and
I
celebrate.
agree. We're going to have some huge celebration. Whatever Grace Cathedral can do to have that, we're in. And by the way, I was at a board meeting, which I had to leave early in order to be able to meet with you. And so I sent a little in the chat box, I'm going to do, and everybody's tell her we love her. That's what they said. So yeah, you are.
And let me also say this. I appreciate the prayers.
Yeah.
Because so many people I'm praying for you. We're uplifting you. And I feel that because that's what gives me strength to lead this city in this way. It is coming from a power that is not of my own. And so thank you all so very much for your love, for your prayers, for your support, for your patience, and everything that you are all doing to make sure that our city and our country gets through this global pandemic that none of us ever saw coming. It is really been challenging, but we will definitely get through this.
Yeah, well, we'll keep praying for sure. This is our last forum. I just can't believe it. Our last forum of the fall. We hope to see you online for our Christmas concert offerings in December. And we look forward for announcements about the forum's winter season, which will begin in January. You can help us bring the arts to life at Grace with a gift to the forum today. Please visit gracecathedral.org/give to Grace. And Mayor Breed, it's such a pleasure again to see you. Every time I'm with you, I feel just completely energized. You give me a sense of hope. I should call you on my darker days.
Thank you. Anytime, I'm here. Because I know you'll be there for me.
Yep. God bless you and keep you. And thanks to everybody for watching. It's so good to have you all here tonight. Good night.
Good night.